Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host beside me, Anthony Rivardo. And as you know, the NFL draft is quickly approaching, my friends. And there's a realistic conversation to have. Do you go with Kayvon Thibodeaux or do you go with Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati? If you have the 5th, 7th overall pick, whatever it might be, the Giants could be sitting there saying, we have an opportunity to land one awesome defensive prospect. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be a pass rusher who has elite metrics and elite capabilities? Or is it going to be a really great cornerback prospect, arguably the best in the class? We know the value of a cornerback in this day and age, especially with a scheme like Wink Martindale's. And Gardner has just immense attributes, and I really do want to list some of the positives and cons that do kind of associate with this game. But today, Anthony and I will kind of want to debate this. Like, he kind of wants Tibbs. I'm going to advocate for Gardner. I think in the grand scheme, I would love to have either of them, but I think it would be fun to debate, these two players and what makes one better than the other, especially scheme related and, just what the Giants really need and what they've lacked in recent years. Before we dive into this really interesting debate, Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing really great. I'm sure you're doing much better. Everyone in the comment section on YouTube, go congratulate Alex for getting engaged last night. Pretty incredible. Super happy for him. But as you mentioned, the draft is very quickly approaching. These are two phenomenal draft prospects. Honestly, the Giants kind of can't go wrong in this situation. If it's coming down to Thibodeaux or Gardner, can't go wrong. Both of them are great prospects, but really it's going to come down to this debate is going to come down to personal preference. Which player do we prefer based on the needs that the Giants have on their roster? So I'm really excited to dive into these two great first round prospects. So let's get to it, Alex.
Well, you can call me Al, Big Al Pacino, whatever you want. But let's take a look at Kayvon Thibodeaux first, right? Kayvon Thibodeaux is this intriguing player who is charismatic, coming from California. He wants to play on the biggest stage. If you hear him talk, the guy bleeds confidence, right? He's a guy that you want on the biggest stage, but you don't want the associated attitude, the crap that we've seen in the past with players that just can't handle this type of atmosphere and the hostility. And I think that's one of the things that Kayvon Thibodeaux did mention during his conference, after he interviewed with the Giants. They were basically like, they treated me tough. They were like, can you handle not having a sack for 5 games? Can you handle the media saying this guy sucks? Where did he go? Why is he injured? All these things. Can he handle the smoke, essentially? I don't know. With a guy as confident and charismatic as Kayvon Thibodeaux comes a lot of big risks, right? Guys that are humble, guys that stay quiet behind the scenes, you don't have to worry about them. If they get injured, if they, whatever, they have a bad game, they don't even go on social media. They don't care. Kayvon Thibodeaux is going to hear all of it. He's going to get into it. He's going to be out there trying to combat it. And that is either a blessing or a curse, right? If you're a charismatic, confident guy and you're playing at the top of your game, you're headed towards elite status. You're headed towards unbelievable talent and production at any level. But if you fault, if you don't reach that potential, it could be catastrophic. So when you're looking at Kayvon Thibodeaux, Anthony, do you see that being a potential problem? I know his tangibles are awesome. He's an unbelievable pass rusher. He has speed. He has length. He has power. He has a variety of different pass rush moves. Pairing him with Azeez Ojulari would give the Giants one of the youngest and best defensive fronts in football. I mean, Azeez Ojulari, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Dexter Lawrence, and Leonard Williams is a front four to fear, in my opinion. But is there anything that worries you about Kayvon Thibodeaux's, I guess, confidence and charismatic personality that could end up being problematic in New York?
Personally, I'm not worried about it. I like the charismatic personality. I really like that he's confident. I love that he just, wants to play football and be the best. That's what I get from him. And I think he's really smart as well. That one quote that I read many episodes ago where he was talking about how pass rushing is like chess. And that sounded like a seasoned veteran, right? That's how a veteran speaks about pass rushing, because when you're playing football or you're playing chess, right, you're doing one move to set up another move down the line. And that's really the key to being a good pass rusher in the NFL, because some of these offensive tackles are so great. They're going to learn your moves and they're going to counter them. But do you have moves to set up other moves down the line and later on in the game, fourth quarter, you've been setting up one move all game? That's the kind of thing that Kayvon Thibodeaux is capable of, and I really like. And, I think this kind of reminds me a little bit of last year where we were in the NFL draft pre-process, right? I loved Micah Parsons. I thought he was the best player, the best prospect in the 2021 NFL draft. I wanted him so badly. Everyone overthought it. Now, I understand those rumors were even more severe, right? They were even more significant surrounding Micah Parsons and, some allegations that he had in the locker room of Penn State. And he, had that personality that was kind of polarizing. People didn't really like his demeanor and the way that he carried himself. And he ended up falling down to the 11th pick or the 12th pick, wherever it was, where the Dallas Cowboys took him. And he was just dominant. And he was the best defensive rookie of the year. And honestly, he was one of the best defensive players in all of football. He was phenomenal as a rookie. And I fear with Kayvon Thibodeaux, something similar is happening where people don't like his character. They don't like his demeanor. And they're starting to overlook just how phenomenal he is on the football field. Now, I don't think he is the best defensive prospect in this class like Micah Parsons was, but he's up there. He is super talented, one of the best players in this draft class. And I think people are overthinking it, and he's going to fall on draft day. But I don't think he should. I think he's going to have an instant impact as a rookie. Will be a defensive rookie of the year candidate when it's all said and done. And I think, again, this is just reminding me too much of the Micah Parsons situation. I don't want to see the Giants pass up on this guy and have him go dominate elsewhere, especially if he does wind up in the NFC once again, or NFC East, rather.
Right. And, I do agree. I think Kayvon Thibodeaux has that elite potential, right? There is a lot to like when it comes to adding a premier pass rusher to the Giants. Now, we can all kind of come to the agreement that James Bradberry is likely going to be traded. They need that $11.7 million from his cap, the cap hit that he would accrue if not traded. And we need that money. Like, straightforward, we need that money. Unless they're going to release Saquon Barkley and somehow open up more money, I don't know how. It really is going to come from James Bradberry's contract. And Kansas City looks like the perfect destination for him. They just acquired a ton of draft capital in the Tyreek Hill trade to Miami Dolphins. So when you're looking at James Bradberry, it seems like the Chiefs make a lot of sense. Now that opens up a major hole at cornerback, right? I think the Giants like Aaron Robinson, but he's not their guy. He's not Joe Shane's guy. He's not Brian Dable's guy. He is a Dave Gettleman, Joe Judge draft pick. I like Aaron Robinson. He's a physical cornerback, but he doesn't have a lot of experience on the outside. He's more of a slot guy to start his career. I don't know if I fully trust, throwing him into the fire and letting him compete. He did have a couple injuries last year. Of course, there are other players who could compete, but that brings me to Sauce Gardner, right? Sauce Gardner may end up being the best cornerback in this draft class over Derek Stingley out of LSU. It's debatable. I personally think he's better. Why? Because he can fit multiple schemes. Sauce Gardner, and this is the guy that I'm going to advocate for. Anthony's going to kind of advocate for Thibodeaux. And my entire argument revolves around Wink Martindale's scheme, right? Wink Martindale has a scheme that is predicated on aggressive cover one, man coverage, press on ball football, right? He sends the house. He sends the safeties. He sends the corners, the linebackers, everybody that your mom in the stands. He's sending your moms. Like, everybody's rushing the quarterback. So one way or another, someone's going to get to the quarterback. You only have so many blockers, right? You only have 5 blockers, 6 blockers if you have a running back or tight end blocking. Let's say you have 6 blockers on average. Send 7 guys. You know what I mean? Like, send everybody. Like, this is what Wink Martindale predicates his scheme on. What does that mean? It means that someone's going to get home. One of those guys is going to win their individual battles. But the only way that system works is if you have elite cornerback play. Letting go of James Bradberry, who is a very great zone coverage corner, but he doesn't have the speed. If you have a James Bradberry against, I don't know, a McCole Hardman or a Tyreek Hill even, even a Kadarius Toney, he's pretty fast. He's going to get burned. Like DK Metcalf, he's going to get burned on those 9 routes if he's playing press man coverage, which is very, very influential, because when you're playing this scheme like that Wink Martindale likes to play, you can't give a lot of space to receivers, because one move, one route that they win, that break, if they hit the slants and they get that slant and there's no safety help, there's no help over the top, there's no linebackers, they're all blitzing, you're in deep doo-doo. Like, you're giving up 20, 30 yards, if not going to the house. So you need to have elite cornerback play. Sauce Gardner has impeccable length, right? He's a really lengthy and wiry cornerback. I do like that a lot about him. He stands at 6'3" with 190 pounds. So he's smaller in terms of his weights. He's lanky. He's thin. His tackling may be a problem to open up his NFL career because he is kind of weaker, but I think that's something that will develop fundamentally. Lance Zierlein of NFL.com compares him to Richard Sherman. He allowed 6.6 yards per reception in 2021. The guy is sticky. He has unbelievable confidence and competitiveness, similar to Kayvon Thibodeaux. So you're not losing anything in terms of competitive play and just the charismatic personality. He thinks he's the best, and I appreciate that about defenders, especially. The best defenders oftentimes are very charismatic, and I do think that plays a part. So when I'm looking at Sauce Gardner, I think that ultimately, when it comes down to my argument, is that having better cornerback play is more important than having a pass rush, a singular elite pass rusher in Wink Martindale's system, because he sends so many blitzers that you need to have back end defensive back play that's going to be elite to maintain that type of aggressiveness. So I think that the argument I'm making is that Sauce Gardner would be a better fit for that reason. In another scheme, I'm going with Kayvon Thibodeaux, and if we go with Kayvon Thibodeaux, I'm not going to be mad. But I think that that's my logic behind advocating for Sauce Gardner. What do you think about that?
I could see the thought process in that logic. I mean, it is a defensive scheme that's very man heavy and blitz heavy. So a lot of the pressures generated aren't even going to come from the edge rusher position. A lot of them are going to come from safeties or corners blitzing in those packages, sometimes linebackers as well off ball. So there's going to be a lot of different fancy blitzes that Wink Martindale is going to send out there, but they're not going to get home and they're not going to work unless the cornerbacks are doing their job. So I totally understand your argument, and I could totally see why you would feel that way. But for me personally, when you have the opportunity to grab an edge rusher that could potentially be a perennial all-pro, you do it. You just take that player in my eyes, unless you need a quarterback. Like, that's the only reason you would pass up on a potential perennial all-pro edge rusher, because edge rushers impact the game immensely. They're huge. They're so valuable. And if you take a look at contracts, especially, they're super valuable. And Kayvon Thibodeaux is one of those guys that could potentially be a perennial all-pro. I mean, you look at his physicality, his athleticism, all of that is just perfect. He's built similarly to Myles Garrett. He's got all those traits that you need to be a successful edge rusher, but he's also very productive. He had a very productive career. He had games where he had like 12 pressures in a 2-week span, 19 pressures in a 2-week span versus Cal and UCLA in 2021. He had a game with 5 run stops versus Stanford. He's an all-around guy, 3 sacks versus Utah in the Pac-12 title. He's an all-around do-it-all pass rusher. He will make an impact from day one as a rookie. Not saying he'll be an all-pro as a rookie. Maybe he's not Micah Parsons, but he could be. You never know. He really has that physical ability to one day be an all-pro, and that's something that the Giants could really use. Just a guy that's one of the best players in the NFL. That's the potential with Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, I think Ahmad Gardner is phenomenal, and he could be one of the best corners in the NFL at some point in his career, but corners always have really bad growing pains, and a lot of the times when you draft rookie corners and you put them into a defensive scheme that doesn't have a lot of talent around them, they really struggle. Like, if you think back to Jeffrey Okudah, went to the Detroit Lions, right? He was the best cornerback prospect of the last 10, 15 years. That's what everyone said. He was just perfect, the most perfect cornerback prospect. He has been a complete bust. Like, he was terrible as a rookie because he had a bunch of horrible talent around him. I mean, that team was really, really bad. He was caught in a bad defensive scheme as well. They really ruined him as a rookie. He got injured in his second year. We've barely seen any Jeff Okudah. So cornerbacks, I think, are really a lot more dependent on their surroundings in order to find success. But an edge rusher can be productive on a down-to-down basis, contributing as both a run defender and a pass rusher. So their development is much smoother and it comes along much quicker. So that's kind of my argument for the edge rusher position. But again, you take a look at how productive Kayvon Thibodeaux was. He is a phenomenal player, and he is perfectly fitting a huge need that the Giants have been unable to fill for the past few years. They've been searching for edge rusher talent, and they just haven't been able to fill it. And I'll throw out this last little tidbit here. If you take a look at edge rusher contracts, if you want to think financially about this, and the Giants definitely seem like they're being very careful with their spending. If you go ahead and you look at the highest paid edge rushers in the NFL, TJ Watt tops the list at $28 million on average per year. There's a bunch of guys over 20. Von Miller, of course, just signed that contract with over $20 million per year. Max Crosby just signed at 23.5. Khalil Mack is on 23.5. Myles Garrett at 25. The highest paid cornerback in the NFL is Jalen Ramsey at $20 million. And then from there on, it trickles down to 19, 17, 16, 15, 14. So the highest paid cornerbacks in the NFL are a lot cheaper than they are for edge rushers. So if you want to get good edge rushing talent, you're going to have to pay for it in free agency. So it's really important for the Giants. Strike while the iron is hot. Go ahead, get Kayvon Thibodeaux on a rookie deal and build around a very cheap version of a great pass rusher, because again, he's going to make an impact very early on in his career, and the Giants won't have to pay a premium for those early years of his career. So he could start being really productive at that all-pro level in about year 3. And maybe the Giants have a new quarterback that's in year 2, and then they're ready to rock and roll. They can just go ahead and start winning some games early on with one of the best edge rushers in the NFL on a real bargain of a rookie contract. So that's the way I see it. Just financially speaking, you want to bring in those young guys who play at those really expensive positions, because going down the road, it's going to be way too difficult to acquire them another day.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most reasonable argument, is that like it comes down to money at the end of the day, and you need to be focusing on what's going to save you down the line. Um, I wonder though that I would say this: cornerback seems to be it's more rare to find an elite cornerback than it is to find an elite pass rusher, right? I'd say there's a lot of elite pass rushers. Having an elite CB1 and a good CB2 is like really difficult. The Giants had it last year with Jackson and James Bradbury. Problem is the offense, the whole team was just terrible. It comes down to coaching, right? I think Jeff Okudah could have been a lot better if he had better coaching. Detroit seems to just ruin players, right? And I think that's been problematic for them. Obviously, they did actually, despite being a bad team last year, they had games where they looked good. And they did a really great job developing Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's like one of my favorite players from last season. Absolutely crushed the fantasy football playoffs for me. And Anthony, we pointed him out, and you did a film review about him last offseason, and he was a guy that we were really intrigued by. So this year, my guy is Sky Moore. I really like Sky Moore out of Western Michigan. A lot of people are kind of getting on the train now, and I think he would be an awesome player. I mean, Christian Watson, a lot of people have mentioned Christian Watson to me out of North Dakota State. Another guy who's lanky. He reminds me of like Darius Slayton, but with actual hands, which would be kind of nice. A little bit more athletic too. But when you're looking at Sauce Gardner, we're looking at Kayvon Thibodeaux, it's going to be interesting. I think that you can't really go wrong. I'm not going to be mad with either of those players, but I have to say though, Anthony, I tend to feel a little bit scared about Martindale's scheme. I know the numbers prove to be successful. He has a lot of success with his aggressive style, but he also has lost a lot of games because of it too. We've seen Baltimore give up touchdowns last second. We've seen them giving up big plays. If the Giants can't score, they're going to lose a lot of games because that defense with average defensive backs and not a great pass rush is a recipe for disaster. And the Giants' offensive incapable is also going to be problematic. So it's going to come down to coaching, man. Like I keep saying it, I'm going to keep hammering it home. If they are not coached well, this team is going to suck again. But when you have good coaching, you can get a lot out of guys who don't have a lot to offer in the first place. We've seen New England do it year after year, really cheap, undrafted free agents. I mean, Mac Jones, for goodness sake, man. I called that last year. I was like, he's going to the Patriots and he's going to be a good quarterback because he was not the best metric, like in terms of athleticism. He offers basically nothing as an athlete. He is a pure pocket passer, and they managed to coach him mentally to make the right decisions and to move the football downfield. And it comes down to coaching, and that's what's gonna make this Giants team good or bad. But I'm really intrigued to hear what you guys think about Kayvon Thibodeaux, Sauce Gardner. Who would you prefer if the Giants were stuck between those two guys? I'm really curious to hear what you think because it's a tough decision to make. It's a tough debate, but I think it's one that we should definitely have because those two guys could be on the board for us. Who knows? They're saying that two quarterbacks could go in the top 5 picks right now, Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett. So anything is possible. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. As always, make sure to like and subscribe below, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.